Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Stop Spinning Your Wheels, Get Lost Pets Home Without Using Shelter Resources. My name's Monica Dangler. I am the director at Pima Animal Care Center in Tucson, Arizona, and I'll let Caitlin introduce herself.
I'm Caitlin. I'm the pet resource manager at Pima Animal Care. I've been there for over 6 years now. I like to pace when I talk, and I can't see very well right now, so if I fall off the stage, just ignore me.
Great. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about PAC and why we chose to use Petco Love Lost for our lost and found reunifications, how we implemented it and how you can implement it, how lost and found staff use Petco Love Lost in their daily duties. So if you have some lost and found staff, how you can use them. The data, right? We all need the data to know why we're using it and how it's beneficial to us. And then of course, we'll have questions for everybody. So all of you guys have questions, we'll do that at the end. So a little bit about PAC. We are the municipal intake shelter for Pima County. So that means we have a 9,000 square mile area, so just a really small geographic place that includes all of unincorporated Pima County, as well as the cities of Tucson, South Tucson, the town of Oro Valley, and the Pasco-Yaqui tribe, which is a small reservation that's an urban reservation. We have an annual intake of about 17 to 20,000 animals annually. That's just dogs and cats and a handful of pocket pets. There's no livestock and wildlife in those numbers. Our annual budget is about $11.6 million. Why that sounds like a lot, it's also a lot of animals. So it's not a huge budget, but it's not super small. And then about 63% of our intakes are stray animals. Specifically when we're looking at dogs, those are coming in as stray animals. And we have about 200 dog adoption kennels. We have more kennels than that for isolation and for the clinic and all the other places, but solely for adoption and strays, 200. On average, in 2023, we were housing 461 dogs at any given time in the shelter. So that's why it's so important for us to get those pets home or keep them out of the shelter in the first place, because that's a lot of co-housed dogs in the shelter. In 2023, we saw our highest census day on March 17th, with 525 dogs in the shelter. So that meant basically 75% of our kennels had co-housed dogs, and then there was a handful of kennels that had, a whole bunch of puppies and stuff like that in it. Our average return to owner numbers for in-shelter and the community was 20% at that point in time.
Okay, so to understand what we did and why we did it, you kind of need to know where we came from and what was happening before. And that starts with strategic intake. How many of you guys have heard of strategic intake or maybe use it yourself? So it's also referred to as managed intake or intake diversion. I personally like to call it strategic intake because I think it captures it a little bit better and truly explains what it does. The biggest misconception I hear about strategic intake is that you're saying no. You're putting up barriers and you're not taking pets into your shelter, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Done correctly, strategic intake makes you a resource in the community. Yes, it'll help you manage the pets that are coming into your shelter and potentially help you lower your census and increase your save rate, as we saw when we implemented it. But you're also helping families where they're at. You're focusing on keeping families together when it's done right. So prior to 2015, PAC was what we like to refer to as still kind of in the dark ages. We were starting to take some efforts to improve life-saving and focus on positive outcomes for animals in our care, but we were drowning. The pets were just flowing through our doors. There was nothing we could do. So we decided to try out this concept of strategic intake, and how we started was in 2015, we put a door outside of our intake table. We put a table outside our intake doors. And we had a volunteer sit there and just talk to everybody who was trying to drop off animals. Prior to that, it was just a long line of people constantly coming through the doors. It was a really quick transaction, no questions asked, take the animal and leave. And whether or not that animal had a live outcome was to be determined. So this volunteer would sit outside the door, talk to everybody who was coming up to surrender an animal, and would just find out why they were there. And what we learned was there was a lot of things people were telling us that were avoidable to keep that pet out of the shelter. It was just a lack of education. It was a lack of resources. It was a lack of access. So we started trying to bridge that gap to provide them those resources. And then where we failed to be able to keep that pet in the home, was there another outlet to keep it out of the shelter? Was there a rescue or another organization that we could send that pet to? And it went well. We realized we're onto something here. It's working. We were already starting to see an impact, so we took it a step further, and we started what we refer to as our Pet Support Center in 2016. We hired some staff, about 2 or 3 staff, who was entirely responsible for answering phones. We decided, okay, well, we're meeting them at the shelter, but what if we can get to them before they show up at the shelter? So let's set up a way for them to be able to call in to us and tell us what they need. At that time, in its infancy, it was very much about truly just managing the intake coming into the shelter. So if you were trying to surrender a pet, your owned pet, you would schedule an appointment for it. They would do their best to triage the situations. They would provide resources where they could. We're obligated, this will be important later, we're obligated under our ordinances to service strays. So trying to strategically manage the intake of the strays at that time was nothing we were even thinking about, but we wanted to try to focus on owner surrenders because we had more wiggle room there. We started building relationships and finding resources within the community. I started in specifically the Pet Support Department in 2019. And at that time, we had some relationships, we had some resources, we knew a lot. There wasn't a whole lot of structure to it, though. We spent most of our time just scheduling appointments for people to bring that pet into the shelter, and I learned very quickly there was a huge mountain we were gonna have to climb when it came to the mindset of how we were thinking about these people who were calling to surrender their pets. There was a lot of judgment happening. Basically, yeah, you're gonna call us, I'm gonna schedule you an appointment, I'm gonna give you help, but I don't think you're a worthy pet owner, and I'm gonna give you a hard time on the phone. So we had to keep growing from there. We had to keep evolving from there. We learned that we couldn't do it on our own. We had to really address the mindset that was going on in the department. So that's one of the things that we started to focus on while we were simultaneously building relationships. When I started in pet support, we had 2 community partners we worked with. Now we have over 24. That consists of over a dozen vet clinics. We have boarding facilities, trainers, groomers, informational resources, financial institutions. We have a whole bunch of people at our backs trying to help us keep pets out of the shelter. We introduced a concept called trauma-informed care. How many of you have heard of trauma-informed care? Yeah. So it started in the field of psychology, psychological care, and it's in the past few years finally made its way into animal welfare. And the idea in a nutshell is we only ever know this much of someone's story when there's actually this much to their story. Therefore, it is irresponsible of us to try to make an educated judgment about their situation when we only know this much. So our job is not to judge them. It is not to further complicate their situation or potentially further traumatize their situation, but to help them with what they came to you for. So we heavily pound that into training when new staff come on board. We make it very clear what we're here to do. We're here to treat every pet as an individual and each person as a unique situation. We can't lump it all together. When you do that, you become blind to everything else. We were already triaging situations. We were trying to figure out what needs to come to us now, what doesn't need to come to us, what can we keep out of the shelter by providing them resources, and what might inevitably end up at the shelter. You know, you always get those situations where there's nothing you can do to help them, but there's nothing emergent about that situation. So how can you plan for that pet to come into the shelter? So that is the basis of strategic intake. And, like I said before, when it's done correctly, you will manage the intake that's coming into the shelter. You will see results. You will see your intake start to drop and your live release rate go up because you're able to put more focus on the pets that truly need you.
So why PAC decided to start using Petco Love Lost exclusively for our reporting, which when I say that, what I mean is all of us, who uses Chameleon? Everybody, yeah. Who uses PetPoint? All the other people, right? And you have the links, you have the lost and found links, you go on there, that's where people record their lost and found at. And then it magically gets onto your website, into the thing with lost and found pets. We do not do that. We broke those links, we stopped using those forms, and started using Petco Love Lost exclusively for people to find their lost and found pets. And the reasons why we did that was in 2023, when we started, we saw our return to owners plateau. We weren't really getting any better. It was about 20%. We still had lots of dogs coming into the shelter. Our shelter status was, our census was 100 to 180 dogs more than our capacity. That's way too many, right? That's not good for anybody. So we need to find a way to responsibly turn off that intake valve while our open valve is open. 2/3 of 2022, PAC had 500 to 580 dogs in the shelter, not in foster, not anywhere else, in the shelter living. Way too many dogs. It was bad for staff. It was bad for the volunteers. It was bad for the dogs, right? We started at that time seeing lots of upper respiratory infection outbreaks. We saw strep zoo, which most of you are lucky enough not to know. If any of you have rural areas, you might know. It's a bacteria transmitted through horses. We have horses that live right next door to just a regular house, right next door to the interstate. So they're kind of throughout, and then we have washes throughout the county where horses, wildlife dogs can travel throughout the county very easily. So we see strep zoo a lot. It's spread through upper respiratory by coughing and sneezing. When the dogs get it, especially when they're super stressed in a kennel environment, they end up hemorrhaging, and we typically find them dead in kennel, and it's pretty traumatic for everybody. So we were seeing that. We were seeing distemper. We were seeing pneumovirus. We were seeing all of those viruses, because once you get one in, they all kind of build off of each other. And it was really expensive. It was really traumatizing for everyone. It was really labor intensive to treat those pets. And we saw that between October 2022 and April 2023. And at that point, we were like, we got to do something. I was like, Caitlin, what about this Petco Love Lost thing? Maybe it can keep some pets out. We were spending tons of money. Luckily, we have an amazing friends group that was helping us treat those pets and paying for those extras. But it was eroding the community trust that they could come get a healthy pet from us. It was eroding our trust with our rescues that they could get healthy pets from us, that they weren't going to take diseases into their foster homes. And we just wanted to make sure people knew that they could obtain pets from PAC and that they were going to be healthy, friendly pets that they could take home. So we, like I said, May, we said, what are we going to do? We'd been tossing it around forever. We were overthinking it because we're a municipal shelter. And when you do something new and it goes wrong, OMG, right? You're like talking to all the electeds. You got to do all kinds of news stories. And we didn't want to add more difficulty to our plate already. We were already super over capacity, didn't have any extra bandwidth. But we ultimately were like, we got to do something, so let's just do it. So luckily, Caitlin likes to jump off bridges, so that was great. So we both jumped off the bridge together. We're like, we're going to make it happen. And so we did that. And ultimately, what we learned is what we did was really difficult, and it didn't need to be as difficult as we made it. And you can actually do it in one very easy step, and that's just change your website. Take off the links to your forms and just put up the Petco Love link so that people can just click it and report their lost or found pets there. There are other actions you can take if you want to make it difficult, like Caitlin and I did. You can communicate out to your stakeholders, over-communicate. Misty Valenta, she runs Williamson County Regional Animal Shelter in Georgetown, Texas. She implemented it the first way that I just said. She just literally changed her website. She didn't tell anybody, and nothing happened. It was totally great. where we did lots of memos, lots of communication. So depending on what your government situation looks like or your shelter relationships look like, pick which way to go. Neither can go wrong. But we sent out memos to our county administrator, to our board of supervisors. We sent out emails to our volunteers, to our rescue partners, to all the Facebook pages. We did trainings for the Facebook pages and our volunteers and community partners on how to use Petco Love Lost. The trainings were literally a minute because it's so easy. But we did all of those things and communicated out with our stakeholders and told them when we were going to be pulling the plug and doing this. The other things you can do is engage with law enforcement and animal control if they don't work directly with you. We've seen with other communities, having law enforcement know how to use it. So if they find that pet, especially if you have a lot of law enforcement bringing in pets to you, if they find a dog, snap a picture of it, upload it to Petco Love, and see if somebody's looking for that pet. We've seen in communities where the law enforcement's actually able to take it directly home to the people. And that can also work for your animal control if they work for you or you contract out to different animal control agencies. Keep those pets from coming. And if they aren't a match, they can just finish the upload and it goes up and it says the pet's at your shelter. So that way, when that person realizes their dog went for a walk, they can come directly to your shelter and get it in a quicker amount of time. And then the other thing would be work with your lost and found Facebook groups, right? If you're like Tucson, we have, 9 million lost and found Facebook groups. So work with them, let them know what's going on, let them know how it works, and get their buy-in to use that. So the more people that are using it, the better, the more likely pets are gonna get reunited and not come into your shelter.
So we told you about pet support, how we started managing our owner surrenders, and then Monica also talked about our RTO rates were plateauing. We still had pets streaming through our doors. So we're like, what do we do? Our intake is still over 60% strays coming in. So our next point of focus was we decided to look at our lost and found efforts because the strays were still pouring through our doors. What else could we do? Is there anything strategic we could implement with lost and found to try to make our lives a little easier? And upon closer inspection, this is what we observed when it came to our current, or now previous lost and found processes. So you lose a pet or you find a pet in Pima County a year and a half ago. You would, it's the first time it's ever happened, you've never lost a pet, you don't know what to do. Or I'm gonna Google. Google always has the answer, right? What do? I lost my pet. And then your metadata is gonna show Pima Animal Care Center for you. You're gonna click on that site, you're gonna dig through a very government-looking website, and you're gonna find the lost and found page. And then hopefully you're gonna find a link that says, report my lost pet. And then you're gonna fill out a form. Maybe you can get through the CAPTCHA if you're good and you can prove that you're not a robot, and then it'll submit the form for you. And then after that, it goes into an inbox. And then you're gonna go back to that lost and found page and be like, all right, I reported it, what's next? And you're gonna see a list of things to do this long. And you're gonna be extremely overwhelmed. Post here, look here, do this, do that. Where are you gonna start? I'm a professional, at least I like to think I'm a professional in this field. And the best of us can lose their dogs. I lost mine probably about a year and a half ago. They went on an adventure 3 times in one morning and I had no idea because they kept coming back. It wasn't until the 3rd time I realized they were missing. And the panic sets in. I'm like, oh my God, my dogs are lost. I'm out in a rural area. What am I gonna do? I go running out the front door. I'm thinking through everything that I know how to do, and I immediately got overwhelmed. I'm like, there's too many sites to post. There's too many things I have to do. I don't even know where to begin. Fortunately, the little jerks were in the front yard, so I didn't have to do anything after that. But not everybody's that lucky, right? So then fast forward, you get overwhelmed, you give up, you don't know what to do. And then on our end, what are we doing with that report you just filed? That's the only thing you were able to accomplish, so what's happening? It just went into an inbox that gets 50+ new emails daily, and at any given time had 150 emails sitting in that inbox, and all lost and found staff were doing was just manually inputting those reports. They were putting them in all day. They were about 1 to 2 weeks behind on those reports. That doesn't do anybody any good. You lost your pet. If it goes to the shelter, by the time it's posted, it's probably already adopted, or somebody's probably keeping it. You're never going to see your pet again. Same thing for finders. You're never going to locate the owner if the shelter isn't able to post fast enough to try to help you, because that's the one thing you were able to accomplish. You didn't know what else to do. Forget phone calls. We weren't answering your calls. It was going to go to an inbox, and you might hear from us in 3 days. Again, that wasn't doing anybody any good. At one point, we did try to change our forms to be more automated so that when people did submit it, it automatically went into our website, which sure, it had some impact. Now we were getting it on the website immediately, but half those forms didn't have pictures. We were still having to go through and fix it. It was still a huge workload for staff, not to mention it didn't solve the problem that there was 50 million things we expected people to do to try to locate the owner out in the community. And then to top it all off, we weren't spending any time looking at the lost pets that were coming to the shelter without a finder that was advocating for them. We were spending all of our time with the finders that were advocating for strays in the community and helping them find the owner. They're already willing to do that. What if there was a way to try to give them that information? And that's when Monica and I found out about Petco Love Lost. We heard about this platform that seemed to be everything we were looking for. People filed reports themselves. They were able to communicate with the owners directly or finders directly. They didn't need us to do it. It required a photo to be able to post it. It connected with multiple social media platforms and created their own flyers. And we're like, this is too good to be true. This is animal welfare we're talking about. We've always had to climb mountains and fight battles to get to where we're at. This doesn't seem real. This doesn't seem right. So then I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stalk all these other shelter websites of anybody else who's saying that they posted on Petco Love Lost and see how they're doing it. And that's going to give me an idea how this is going to go. Nobody else was using it the way that we talked about using it. Nobody else was being exclusive on Petco Love Lost as their only lost and found reporting platform. Everybody still had a way for it to be able to post on the shelter website. So we're like, all right, we're going to be the first ones to do this. Let's see what happens. So May 1st, 2023 rolls around. We did all the steps. We overthought it. We communicated to everybody. We hosted trainings. I made videos. I made handbooks. We were ready. May 1st happens. We changed everything. Nothing blew up. Nobody came knocking through our doors. The phones weren't ringing off the hooks. I didn't get any nasty emails. It's like nothing happened. I remember checking the website 2 or 3 times a day going, no, it's working. It's working, but what's happening? It was truly that easy, but this is what we did see. Suddenly, we weren't getting 50 emails a day in our inbox. We were getting 15, 1-5 on average emails into our inbox. And those emails weren't people filing reports that then we had to go fill out in our system. These were people who were legitimately going, my pet's in your shelter, how do I get it back? That's way more productive for us. We were answering phone calls. We were actually able to help people right then and there. And do you know how much shorter those phone calls were? Yeah, just post here, and you're done. That's all you gotta do. Rather than staying on the phone with them for 5 to 15 minutes, talking them through the whole process, telling them where else to post, walking them through how to upload the picture on our government website, how to get through the CAPTCHA. You know how hard it is to talk someone through on the phone, trying to talk them through a CAPTCHA when you can't see what they're looking at? Yeah, it's infuriating. And then for those people who still wanted to try to match pets, I have that option for you, but you're gonna match pets in the shelter with people who are missing them out in the community. Right here is a little snapshot of the backdoor access that Petco gave us. So all of our pets that come into the shelter and stay get uploaded onto Petco Love Lost. And so we have this little backdoor account that we're able to use to look through them. And so for anybody who wants, can press this little purple button right here and say view matches. And then this magnifying glass comes up, and then it says searching neighbors, searching next door, searching our database. And then it populates with all the matches. We were no longer manually looking through 15 million pages to see all the pictures of the pets. It was doing it for me. And then in 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds, it would tell me if there's any matches, and if not, I can go on to the next one. So suddenly this workload was magically lifted off of people who were specifically supposed to focus on lost and found. So what's next? What's the next step after that? We've just implemented a platform. We handed it to the community on a silver platter with a little bow on top to tell them how to reunite pets in the community, and then we step back and they're like, okay, now what? How do we help the pets in the shelter? we noticed a common theme when people would bring us strays into the shelter on ways that they were willing to help us hold on to that stray. But depending on who you got that day would determine how much you were helped and how many resources you were given to be able to accomplish that. So we decided to eliminate the possibility of human error and created 3 very specific pathways for people to follow when they wanted to help us in some way, shape, or form keep that stray out of the shelter. We're being strategic. See? Strategic intake comes back around. It's full circle. The first thing that we do, and this is probably the most popular option, is called Found Pet Resources. These ones specifically are not booked into our shelter database. They are not part of our shelter census. They don't end up staying at the shelter. And it's when those people come in and it's a cute little dog, maybe highly adoptable, or it's that dog that just really connected with them, reminds them of their dog they had when they were 10, and they really want to help hold on to it out in the community and try to find the owner, but they don't know what to do. But they're willing to hold on to it indefinitely. There's no end in sight at this point. All right, cool. So we're going to set you up with Found Pet Resources. So what that means is we have a finder comes in, they let us know what they want to do. They meet with someone, we call them case managers, because when you're referred to a case manager, it sounds really important, like we're taking you seriously, which we are. And we set them up with vaccines and a microchip, and we hand them this nice little packet of steps to do, which include post on Petco Love Lost. So Petco Love Lost understood that the average person is not going to do more than 1 to 3 things to try to find a pet because of how overwhelming it is. So they highlighted the top 3 steps that is most effective in trying to locate the owner out in the community. That's posting on a uniform platform, Petco Love Lost, talk to your neighbors. Vast majority of dogs are only found 3 doors down from their house, and check for identification or a microchip. So we mirrored that in our process, and then we put that into our little packet. We gave them steps of what we wanted them to do. And then for those overachievers, we told them what else they could do after that. And then we had it spelled out for them. If you're not able to find the owner, this is your next step after that. They didn't need us anymore after that. We gave them everything they needed. They were out our door. We were done. The next step is 3 to Thrive. These are not booked in yet. How many of you have heard of the 48-hour pilot program that Haas did a couple years ago? That concept. So the idea behind that concept is you're most likely to find a pet or its owner in the first 48 hours of that pet being missing. And I'm a crime buff, so I got super excited with this because I'm like, oh, first 48 hours is the time you're most likely to solve a crime, so this makes sense. So I ran with that when I decided to create this official pathway. That was a little spin I put on it. But then, as Monica touched on, we started having these outbreaks. We had pets getting sick. We had to take some drastic measures to try to keep the pets in our population from getting sick. So we decided to add another element onto it to better serve our purposes. So we were capturing that 48-hour concept, but we added an extra day on there, hence the 3 to Thrive, so 72 hours. And the idea behind that was when we had pets coming into our shelter and they were staying that same day, the vaccines we gave them upon entry weren't doing anything in that shelter environment. Their immune system was not properly able to respond to that vaccine to give them any sort of protection in the shelter. So we started asking finders to hold on to those strays for at least 3 days. We'll give them vaccines right then and there, and then they go home in their hopefully much less stressful, relaxing home environment. That pet has a better chance of building up an immunity with those vaccines on board. So if and when they do come back to the shelter, they have better protection. So we set them up with that. We scheduled an appointment to return. And then what we found is we kept getting phone calls of these people who signed up for 3 to Thrive going, yeah, I fell in love with this. I don't know if I want to bring it back. Can you go ahead and cancel my appointment? I'll still try to find the owner, and I'll call you guys if I need any help. Or we were getting those calls going, yeah, I found the owner. I don't need you guys. They don't come back very often. The last option was trying to capture those people who were like, I don't know, I really want a little bit more support from the shelter. I've never done this before. I'm lost. Okay, all right. We can get on board with that. We get it. So we came up with we call it a finder to foster pathway. So because of our own rules, regulations, risk management, and all that, we kind of had to tweak it. But the basis of it is the pet would serve its stray hold at our shelter for what we have to do, which is about 3 to 5 days. And then if this person can come back and foster it as soon as that stray hold is up, if it doesn't otherwise get reserved for adoption or redeemed by its owner during that time period. So while we weren't necessarily able to keep it out of the shelter that specific day, we have guaranteed placement for this. So we're being strategic about its intake and expediting its placement back out of the shelter. And then for everybody else, we ask them to still post on Petco Love Lost and other social media sites. We originally had a fourth pathway. When we first started this, we called it Stop, Drop, and Post. And that was for anybody who's like, I really can't hold on to this, but I'll do a little bit for you guys. So we would ask them to advocate for that pet and post it across different platforms. And it was hugely popular. And then we're like, why don't we just ask every finder who's gonna leave a stray at the shelter to do that? That makes sense, right? It's the least we can do. So we set that up for them, and we have found we have at least a 49% participation rate with finders in the community willing to participate in one of these pathways or help us by posting that pet. So we're animal people, right? We're animal welfare. We love our data. I know some of you are probably looking at me going, this is great. It's great in theory, but where's your proof? Did this actually work for you guys, or does it just sound good? And that's what we thought too. I marinated on this, Monica and I marinated on this for about 6 months. We let this process go. We were using Petco Love Lost. And then the time came to ask for our first batch of data. I was terrified. I didn't want to know how we were doing. Nothing blew up. That was a win. A win is a win, in my opinion. I didn't want to know what else was happening, but we have to, right? It's just not smart to look the other way. So I reached out, and I asked for the data, and they finally sent it to me. And I read that email about 5 times, and then I probably sent just as many emails back going, so when you say this, you mean this, right? I couldn't believe my eyes because the numbers were way better than we could have anticipated. People willing to report a found pet increased by 49% in the community. Owners willing to report their pet lost increased by 42% in the community. It was so much easier for them to be able to post on a central platform about what happened to their pet. They didn't need our help. They didn't need to go through our government-looking website and go through that CAPTCHA. They didn't need to follow all that process. They could do it on their own if we just gave them the know-how to be able to do it. And community reunifications increased by 101%. We're control freaks. We see the worst of humanity a lot, and it's really easy to forget that the worst of humanity that we do see in the fields that we've chosen to work in is a very small percentage of those people. The vast majority are right here. They're willing to help you. They want to help you. You just have to let go of that control. We can't do it alone. That's why we're all in the position that we're in. We need the community's help, so let's let them help. And this data is a full year's worth. It's not the 6 months, it's the full year's worth of data. So this is from May 1st, 2023 to May 1st of 2024. We compared it apples to apples. It was the exact same zone that they were pulling. We pulled from our old reports when we used to use Chameleon. Not only was this blown out of the water, but they gave us national statistics of how we ranked with the other shelters that were trying to do something similar. And we came in as number 2 when it came to community engagement and community reunifications. We were only beat by LA. And that's because we can't compete with LA's population, and I don't even want to, so I would take number 2. This is my favorite slide. So as with any big changes, you get a lot of pushback. You get people who are always going to find something wrong with it. You're going to always get people who want to argue, people who don't want to see this happen. And the biggest one I would get was those without a phone or a computer are unable to use this platform. Okay, my answer to that was, how's that any different than what we did before? It was still on the computer, it was still on a website, we still required people to do that. It's harder to find on a phone than Petco Love Lost is. Then we had a situation, a couple months into using this, where we had an unhoused gentleman come to the shelter, and he's like, my dog's here. Okay, well, how'd you find your dog here? We like to track that so we know where people are getting engaged and able to find their pets. He goes, oh, Petco Love Lost. Really? Well, how'd you use it? He doesn't have a phone. He hardly has anything except for his dog. His dog was his only possession. But he knew how to get access to that. He knew somebody, he knew where to go. He Googled Petco Love Lost, he followed our process, and he saw that his dog was at the shelter, and he came to us. So if he can do it, everybody else can do it. We are 2 decades into the 21st century. We have a lot of technology. Even people who don't use it a lot, they have resources, they have ways to get around it. And when all else fails, you can still call us and we'll walk you through it. It's not user-friendly. I never understood that argument. I thought it was way more user-friendly than our old process was. It's really self-explanatory. There's no room for guesswork. You Google Petco Love Lost, and there's this big button that says, I lost a pet, I found a pet. That's pretty easy. I just click the one I'm looking for, and then it asks for your location. You upload a photo if you have one. If you don't find a match, it prompts you to create an account, and then you make your own report. There's no guesswork involved. Had a lot of people who would say, you're making my job obsolete. Everything I did and lost and found before, it's no longer there. Have you seen the 500 dogs in our care right now? Have you seen the 17,000 animals that are still pouring through our doors? I promise your job's not obsolete, it's more efficient. I'm redirecting your focus on the pets in our care so we can focus more on trying to get them back out of the shelter and make a difference there. You always get people who are resistant to change. There's not much you can do there. You just have to show them why it works and what it's going to do for your community. And the facial recognition doesn't work. Well, that's because it's not facial recognition. It is image recognition. They're two different things. This isn't the FBI, guys. It's not looking at the face, examining the bone structure on these points and doing a 72% match for you, looking through street cameras and world databases and ID cards. That's not how that works. It is image recognition. And it's looking at, the best way it works is if you get a full body picture of the dog with the dog looking at you, or a cat. I've seen multiple demonstrations that they've done, matching a black cat with another black cat. I can hardly do that in person. It's amazing how the technology can figure it out. So Petco Love Lost, before it was Petco Love Lost, it was Finding Rover. And then they bought it out and changed the platform a little bit. Finding Rover did do facial recognition, and it was only about 60% accurate. Petco Love Lost took over, did image recognition, and it's got 99% accuracy rate. When I first started playing around with the platform, I was making found reports and lost reports of the same dog and posting different pictures. And that dog that I would post would pop up in at least the first 5 matches, if not the first 2 rows. So it definitely works. And then wanting more control on community efforts. They don't need our help. They don't want our help. We need to let go of that control. This photo right here, we had a woman named Liz reach out to us on our Facebook Messenger. And she's like, I found a dog, what do I do? We're busy, we didn't see that message till 30 minutes later, and we go to respond to her, and then we get another one that says, never mind, I went to Petco Love Lost and I found the owner. You don't need our help. I can't say that enough.
All right, continued challenges. Right, we're a municipal shelter, so we have a lot of distrust. Our community doesn't trust us all that much. So that's what's so great about Petco Love Lost. It's a third-party, nonprofit application, not Pima Animal Care Center. Pima County has, we have a large section of the border to Mexico, so we have a lot of migrants. We have a large section of our county that are full of sovereign citizens, so they don't like the government either. And then you got everybody in between that we've at some point ticketed or cited or whatever. So they don't trust us. When they can go to this third-party website, that's great. They're able to help find lost pets or reunite with their pet. We have a lot of people that are afraid of punitive measures because their dog was loose, right? That wasn't that long ago that PAC did just walk around, give citations. Oh, your dog's loose, who cares? Now you're a criminal, we're gonna cite you. And they're still afraid of that. They're afraid of being cited. They're afraid of walking into the shelter and having us say, oh, you wanna reclaim your pet? Great, that's gonna be $1,000. No, I'm gonna give you your pet because I don't want your pet in my shelter. But they're still afraid, they don't know. Lack of awareness and education on what to do if you lose or find an animal, right? So even if they don't come to our website, they Google Petco Love Lost, they go to one of our shelter partners' websites, and they have Petco Love. Petco Love tells them their next steps. After you fill this report, go walk your neighborhood, check IDs and tags. So everybody's telling them the same thing to do. And then location and transportation is a big one for us. Like most municipal shelters, we were built on the outskirts of the town, so we could do rotten things and nobody would know about it. Anybody in a municipal shelter is probably the same thing. The closest bus stop for us is a mile away from our shelter. And then there's a two-way road that's speed limit's 40. Everybody drives about 60 miles an hour on it with no sidewalks. So even if you decide to walk to the shelter, which people do all of the time, it's very dangerous for them to do that. So those are a few of our challenges.
So what's next? Accomplished a lot in a short period of time within the last year. So what's our next step? We're still trying to focus on trying to limit the strays that are pouring through our doors. We're trying to get more pets back home. So how many of you got to see the Spanish presentation yesterday? Oh, you have a couple people. So we started a campaign to try to really focus on communities that needed us the most. Those were the ones that we saw that had a really high intake coming into the shelter but a low return. And that campaign saw massive success. And that was just by them going and meeting people where they were at. It was talking to them. It was showing them that we're not the big government scary shelter that everybody thinks that we are. So we wanted to piggyback on that success to try to get into those targeted specific zip codes that need us the most. And our Friends of PAC nonprofit partner has agreed to help us fund a community lost and found team. So we're sending people out there to continue to educate, to hang up flyers, to give people information on Petco Love Lost. This is what you do if you find a pet. This is what you do if you lose a pet. It's in English, it's in Spanish. We're trying to meet as many people as possible in the process. We're trying to continue to build those community relationships. We're going to vet clinics. We're going to local community centers and telling them, this is what we're asking everybody to do. We're going to the other shelters in our area because even if we're advocating for a central platform, it doesn't mean that that's what they're doing. They're still posting on the 15 million other sites, and it's not helping anybody. So we're trying to get everybody on board to do the same things, follow the same process. Because if everybody, finders and owners, are following the same process, they're way more likely to connect without your help. We're providing education on what to do if pet goes missing. And then if we're out there in the community and we run across somebody who's like, oh, my pet's at the shelter, but I can't get there, I don't have transportation, or I don't want to go there, you guys are going to find me like crazy. I can't afford to get my pet back. That's fine. You don't need to go anywhere. I'm going to bring the pet to you. Where's your pet at? Let me process all the paperwork. I will be your liaison. We're trying to make it as low barrier and as friendly as we possibly can. And then Petco Love Lost has been really awesome to be able to work with. They constantly are growing their program and they're improving things because they want to work with shelters and they hear about the things that we say and they want to make the program work better for our needs. So I mentioned earlier it searches Nextdoor and Neighbors right now. So they are communicating with those different platforms to try to truly be that central platform. So instead, you're still going to have people post on multiple different areas, but instead of having to go to each of those sites, Petco's going to do it for you, and it's going to search it, and if it finds a match, it's going to show you a match. They're currently trying to work on a partnership with Facebook. Facebook is a little bit more challenging than other sites are. They're working on a partnership with Ring. And they've also started working on a portal that I got the privilege of being able to experiment with not too long ago, where they heard our request about data. Everybody likes to pull data. We get really used to having it at our fingertips. It's a click of a button and we have the report that we want. Well, so they're trying to create a portal so when you have your shelter backdoor account, you can go directly there and pull the data that you need. You can see the success that's happening.
All right, and that's everything. So do you have any questions? If you have a question, I'm sorry, I know you don't want to do this, but you're going to have to get up and come to the microphone. No questions? Oh, yeah.
Hi, so I know it's used in our area now, but can other areas use that even though their shelter is not a part of it?
Yeah, so right, I mean, it works great if you're a municipal shelter and you're a shelter that has a stray intake. You definitely need to be using it, but all of the shelters and rescue partners in that area, yeah, promote
but
it.
Other areas,
What do you mean, other
like
areas?
in Chicago.
Yeah, it's nationwide. It's a nationwide platform, which that's the magic, right? Imagine, right? Everybody just imagine really quick. What if you lived in Chicago and you knew what to do if you lost your pet, and then you moved to Tucson, and it was the same process, Wouldn't that be awesome? Everybody knows what to do. They're not like, which Facebook page should I look at this time? Everybody knows how to find their pet. It would be awesome. So yes, it is a nationwide platform, and it's great, right? Another big piece of that is it's great for those pets that get lost and sometimes get transported to other states, or right in Tucson, we're an hour and a half from Phoenix, and sometimes people find dogs in Tucson and they're like, you know what, I live in Phoenix and I'm driving up there, I'll just take it up there to the shelter there. So they'll find it a home. So that way they can still be reunited if they're outside of that district. Or if you have a lot of municipalities or jurisdictions all close together, if everybody's doing the same thing, they know what shelter or where that pet's at is really great too.
Hi, I guess just kind of clarification now, is this a software that can be like migrated in where it's automatically posted from like your Shelter Love, or it's a separate entity that you have to go and make a post on this?
That's a great question, and I meant to address that earlier. It will automatically, most common shelter programs it can talk to.
Okay.
So it can automatically upload it for you, and if it doesn't happen to be on board with there, they're really good about being able to work with you to figure out a process for it. And they're actually here at the hub if you want to touch base with them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Hi. So when you're doing a reunification, did you take away any fees? At least in our shelter, we charge a fee for people that are coming to pick up their lost pets. So do you have a fee associated with that?
Yes, our ordinances have fees. However, it gives us the leadway to be able to use those at our discretion. And we lean forward a lot to be able to waive those fees. Our goal is to get that pet back home, so we look for any opportunity to try to do that.
Same. And then have you seen your shelter population go down as a result?
Well, it's too soon to say, and we have a lot of other factors at play right now.
I mean, not to discredit, it's still great work because you're still avoiding those dogs from coming in, but I'm just wondering, how much did it avoid dogs coming in versus stuff that was already happening in the community through Nextdoor or other outlets?
So I'll tell you this, I would be terrified to see what would happen to us if we weren't seeing the success in the community that we are, because that's potentially 2,000 more animals in our care, and that would push us over the edge of what we're already been dealing with.
We have been able to successfully lower the dogs in our care, the census, to about 480-ish. We flex back and forth, which is
that's awesome.
About 100 less than when we implemented it. But right, there's lots of things that impact census, right? Weather and your strategic intake and lost and found and economy and events that are happening. So there's lots of different things. So we don't want to say Petco Love made this 100%, but we do know twice the number of pets are being reunited in the community.
Yeah, which is great.
And they're not coming to us at all, so we can actually use the resources for those pets that truly need to come in, right? Those sick and injured pets, those aggressive animals, the animals the pets with people in crisis. We can actually help them immediately and not have to worry about, do we have the space and or time to care for them?
Okay, and then back to your pet support. So you still have the 3 staff doing the pet support?
So it's better now. We've grown exponentially. I have 6 staff that answer phone calls and also help people in person. We run a safety net foster program to try to keep pets who are struggling with an uncertain housing situation with their family. And then we have a really robust, it's called a Keeping Families Together program, where we're able to provide limited financial assistance for minor medical care for pets in need. So we're continuing to grow, but we've more than doubled our capacity.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yep.
That's really great work. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else? Oh, good. Hurry, run up here.
Okay. So as a municipal shelter, when you're posting the animals on there from your population, like as strays, when the person is coming to reclaim, do you guys have any form of like proof that they have to show that it's actually their animal, and what level of proof do they have to show? Because we deal with a lot of people who come to reclaim and I mean, if you're coming to reclaim and that's your animal, it is, but one of our biggest concerns is when we're using an outside platform, it posted it for anybody to see, and if somebody feels like, I just like that animal and I might come, so is there anything, like, do they have to bring something specific to show you, like, that's my actual dog?
Yeah, so we have two things that people ask us a lot of questions about. How do you show proof, and what about ID? And so when it comes to proof, pictures on their phone, on their Facebook, if they don't have any of that, I will do I'll have them go see the dog, and I'll gauge how the dog reacts to them. I'll ask what their name is. Our staff are really good about being able to figure out who is who, and what we do, nobody really comes for a dog that's not actually theirs.
Yeah.
They can't fake it. That dog doesn't fake it with them at all. So we have multiple different avenues, and then when it comes to identification, like people showing a form of ID, because a lot of places require that government ID, we get really creative. If it's a utility bill, if it's an ID, a school ID, a work ID, if you got a social media with your name and your picture on it just to prove that it's you, that's all I care about.
Okay. And then back to the fees, I know you said you have the discretion to waive them. Have you gotten any pushback as far as like government officials waiving fees for like reclaim? We have reclaim fees, so have you gotten any pushback from them?
Not to my no.
Yeah, no, we have a very supportive county administration, which is amazing, right? They know that there's a couple things they know, right? Keeping pets with their families creates a healthier community. Taking pets away from people causes trauma and distress. And then the expense of keeping a pet in the shelter is a lot, right? We have a really pretty short length of stay. We have about 12 to 14 days for dogs. That still costs us about $500 a dog, as opposed to we can waive those fees. Great. They've decided that we're not a revenue producing part of the government. So they're like, okay, you're not going to ever make enough money to cover your costs. So they just kind of eat it. But it ultimately comes down to our community said we want to be a life-saving community, and this is one of those pieces to being a life-saving community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, so regarding the interaction with animal services, animal control, et cetera, I know you have the stats for community, return to owner numbers increasing and shelter return to owner numbers. Did you notice a substantial difference with animal resources, or rather animal services, animal control, anything like that? Or do you have those numbers?
So the focus of our animal protection team is not punitive, nor do they go out to round up a bunch of strays. So it's hard to really give you that answer right now, unless Monica has those numbers, because their focus is if they do end up picking up a stray on the street, they're trying to find the owner, and then they do have the process. They will look up Petco Love Lost if that pet is going to end up at the shelter, and they'll post on other Facebook pages to try to locate that owner. They'll research the microchip out in the field. But we are also a huge county with about 15 officers at the moment. So they spend a lot of their time focusing on actual emergencies.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm Knoxville, and we have 15 as well. And, so I was just actually hoping, because we have a large number of non-chipped, so I was kind of wondering how that might affect it if we were to try to implement anything.
Well, and that's the glory of Petco Love Lost. You don't need a microchip for them to get reunited, where a microchip, you got to have a scanner, you got to scan it, it has to be registered, the phone number has to take voicemails, right? All of those things. So that's the great piece of that is they don't need to carry microchips with scanners with them and spend all that time calling the microchips when they can post it directly on Petco Love Lost and get them reunited. That being said, they would still scan and make sure they don't have a microchip, but the majority of the animals that they're coming across do not have microchips.
Right. No, I was just hoping to see if there was any sort of substantial return to owner differential that was able to be measured before I go to try to present anything.
You can come talk to us afterwards and we'll talk
absolutely.
about it. And just so you guys know, our time is all up. So you guys, luckily we don't have anybody coming in the room, but feel free to come on up here. Caitlin and I are happy to talk with you with any questions. Our emails are up here. You can always email us any questions you have. And go to the hub, go talk to Petco Love Lost. They'll tell you all the things too. You can go look at their website. Great, thanks guys.